Hello, welcome everyone to another edition of the BINALOT Talks. I see some few unfamiliar faces, so thank you all for coming today. And let me introduce to you what the BINALOT Talks is. So the BINALOT Talks is usually a series of lectures, conversations that the School of Archaeology holds every Wednesday, just to let people, anyone from faculty, researchers, students, to present their work in any shape, form, or fashion. Whether it be having to do with the social sciences, the hard sciences, anything like that, people can just come from any field and talk about their work and their interests. So for those of you who do not know me, hello, my name is Arturo, or Jayjay as I'm more commonly called here, and I'll be one of the co-hosts for today, along with Rona, and our SDR is one of our background tech people for personalities. So today, hopefully, we'll have a very lively discussion about a very interesting topic. So before we actually begin, do we have any announcements to make? Oh yes, enrollment. So for all the students of the School of Archaeology, I'm pretty sure you received the pre-advising emails, and the pre-advising period starts Monday, Tuesday next week. So make sure to contact your advisors for the class you want to enroll. I'm sure that you've seen the class schedule. So yes, and I think that's the only announcements. So to introduce our speaker today, we call up Rona.
Hello, magandang araw sa ating lahat. Hindi ako sanay ni-introduce si Sir na may binabasa. Pero just to have kind of system, I'll need some of his profile. Sir Rick is from UP through and through, although his skills in archival research brought him to UST as archivist for 10 years until 2021. He studied anthropology and Philippine studies, majoring in art history at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. During his studies, he performed with the UP Madrigal Singers in local and international concerts. He helped establish the International Council on Monuments and Sites, or the Philippines, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines Episcopal Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Church. For more than 40 years, he has researched and written on Philippine cultural heritage during the Spanish colonial period. In 1992, his book, Simbahan, was given the National Book Award for Art History. In 1999, Jose was recognized by the Cultural Center of the Philippines as one of the 100 Filipinos who helped build the Filipino nation through art and culture during the last 100 years. He has worked with numerous local, public, and private organizations such as the Ayala Museum, the National Commission for the Culture of the Arts, and the Philippine National Historical Society. Jose was the archivist of the University of Santo Tomás for 2010 to 2011. Everyone, it is my pride to present to you my mentor, Regalado Trota José.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I hope to present some new ideas in this ongoing research, and so para-bala lang tayo. That's why the title is Caysasay questions, because we have many questions that I'd like to throw to the audience. So basically, let's see, Caysasay can be already seen here in Pedro Emilio Livelarde's map of 1734, and that's interesting because the bigger towns then were Taal, Lipa, Bawang, but then you see Caysasay already mentioned there, and Caysasay was always a small visita or barangay of Taal until the 19th century. It never became a town during the Spanish period. It was always a barrio of Taal. And so to see how large the old Taal was, this is the map of Thomas Harbor. The old Taal, which is now San Nicolas, was on the lake shore. And after several eruptions, it moved to away from the lake and onto the bay. And so when it moved here in the 1750s, there was already Caysasay. Caysasay was already. So I guess that's one reason why Taal moved there, because it was close to Caysasay. But Caysasay was always an adjunct of Taal. So it's a very interesting place because Caysasay is by a creek, and it's on the verge of, it's at the bottom of a cliff. You know, Taal, the town, is on the plateau, and at the very bottom is Caysasay. So you have the principal sites that we would like to talk about today are the church with its porch, and the convento, which is L-shaped, and that's over here. And then behind it, about half kilometer away, is the Santa Lucia well, which is this one. And then to connect the old Caysasay with the town of Taal are these stone steps, what they call hagdan-hagdanan, which is this one, very majestic, very majestic. But this was only installed in the 19th century. So it's interesting how the people would come down here without the stairways before it existed. So I'm going to show you some of this basic architecture, some pieces, and then try to show you some documents that will help us to date, give us some dating for these structures and art objects. So this is the church there. Before there was an earthquake about 5 years ago, which caused it to be damaged. And this is the interior. It's all concrete, but on the back you can see that the original stone walls have remained uncovered. And as we come nearer, we see that they are of coral stone. So this is the Arch of Santa Lucia, which is unusual. I was asking, why is it Santa Lucia when obviously the image is Our Lady? And they said, well, St. Lucy is the patron saint for eyes, so clearness. So that's the local tradition. Because at the bottom of the arch are two wells where they get water. The water is supposed to be miraculous, or the water can help to cure all kinds of ailments. So there are bathing houses there where the people can use the water for their bathing. In my last trip here, I learned that this one on the left is the well for the water for the head, and then the one to the right is the water for the body. So I didn't know there was that kind of distinction. And so this is the grand stairway, which links the main town of Taal with Kumbaga. This is uptown and this is downtown. And the steps are rather costly. These are piedra china, which is one of the costliest materials in the Philippines. It was imported from China. But I learned also that there are other informal ways of getting down, like this one. And these are harder to climb down because they're narrower and rougher. So Caysasay has that tradition of an image of the Virgin having been found in 1603 in the lake, and it was fished out of the lake and then eventually put in the church in Caysasay. Now, I'm going to put a question there because in other places they would bring that image to the main church, but in Caysasay it remained in Caysasay. So there must have been something. That's one question. Why did it remain there? So this is the image of Our Lady of Caysasay, and they never really. It's also interesting. They never seem to have repainted the image or put some new encarnado. So I think that's also fascinating. Maybe they feel that they should keep the original covering. So actually, the tradition of Our Lady of Caysasay originally started a whole figuration of Our Lady, which Fernando Sobel calls the Caysasay type. And so there are many images of this type. Like the moon looks almost like a boat. and many have related it to the Matsu, Chinese goddess. So this one um, is a bell, which is now in the Al Basilica, but by this time the image has already been covered with some maybe it's gold or silver uh, work. And this is the cross on the other side. Interestingly, it's a cross of flowers. This is a rare depiction of the cross. The bell is about first half of the 18th century, I would guess. So these are other interpretations of the Caysasay type, just to show you that now we don't know the Caysasay type, but in the 1960s when Fernando Sobel was writing, it was an important type. And this is the gold and silver um, plancha for the image, which in my assessment, that by the style of the decoration, it's bordering on 1800, 1820. It looks very ornate, but I think it's post Rococo, and you see kinds of these designs already in the first quarter of the 19th century. This is the urna of Our Lady, which has not been located, and this is a processional arch of silver, which is still there, and it's thankfully it's still preserved in the church. This is an 1870s print of the retablo or the altar, and some things have disappeared since then. The paintings here behind are not here anymore. But what is interesting are the on top, which most people don't notice, are either griffins or dragons. Here they are. So that's rather unusual. I haven't seen them in any other retablo in the Philippines, and I don't know if they are part of an area retablo which were attached to this one. This one that I showed you is from the 19th century, but very unusual to have these griffins on top. Then also there are two uh, Chinese lions, and we think that since they are so, they look like they were already cast from concrete. So parang pinaltan na. The originals are not there anymore, and we don't know where the originals are. These are poor copies of them, but they are now in the behind the convento. Nobody can see them. But in other places like in Morong, Rizal, um, they until recently they were there in front of a bridge leading to the church. So this is how fine the work would be. And in Caysasay, medyo burda na siya. And there's very little old art in the church. Most of it is 19th or 20th century, but I suspect that this stand of the holy water font is part of an earlier 18th century structure within the church. So it's the only one like of it in the church. So this is the newspaper that I was referring to, 1880. It's available online, so it gives us a lot of information, but the construction of the church is not given. It only talks about the 19th century improvement on the church and the story of how the image was fished out of the lake. So this is the image again, and then there is the porch, and then this is a painting in the Central Bank collection, early 1900s, with that convento. Another unusual thing in this church, among the many other things that are unusual, it has two towers, it has the porch, and it has the L-shaped convento. The L-shaped convento is facing outwards, not inwards. Most conventos in the Philippines, as you know, will face inwards. This one is like parang in St. Peter's in Rome, where it's meant to embrace the crowds. So you could imagine that the devotion was so great that they would put the image out here on the porch, and this convent is part to contain the pilgrims. That's just my thinking. Now, um, there is this portion of a print which has that L-shaped convento already. Now, it's part of an engraving, and I think this is just 1/4 of the engraving. And how this engraving was found is another story. It's part of it kind of parang the methodology that we have in this kind of studies. Um, you can find it in the most surprising places. So actually, this print was written about by a Filipino scholar, Imelda Kahita and Daya, who wrote about Philippine printmaking. And so she said, it's an unusual thing, and she only found it when she went to the UST museum, and um, it was the back part, and it is from a copper plate, not copper plate. I'll show you the copper plate later. The copper plate for this piece was the back of this piece. So think of the copper plate, and it had this Last Supper. And since this Last Supper is complete, it seems that it was taken out from the old Caysasay plate, cut up into four, and 1/4 was used for this plate. And so this is the Last Supper by Bachiller Casimiro de los Santos, whom I've been able to trace was must have been a mestizo Sangley priest in the late 18th century. But then you see so that doesn't help us quite in the dating, but you see here at the bottom PPP school. So who is PPP? It was only later that here. This is the original copper plate of the Last Supper, and this is the copper plate at the back. So this is the order depiction. Sayang we cannot find out where the other parts of the original plate. So at the bottom we see only a part of the inscription. We need to know this. Maybe fundado, something in the sea by the principal named Don Juan Maningkad, and throne something. So just bits and pieces only of the transcription. Maria Espiritu de Leone putting it in her house, and the image made many miracles. And then in the house of the said Spaniard, in which where she lived in the city of Caysasay. So I don't think Maningkad is one referred to as a Spanish lady, obviously. And so it was only later that I found out who PPP was. And it was through a Spanish friend, Pedro Luengo. Pedro Luengo sent me an article. He had done a study on an engraver in Manila, a Franciscan engraver, and the paper was published in Warsaw. They had a conference on Spanish Baroque and Latin America. So it's interesting that even in Warsaw, they have these very specific studies on Baroque Spanish art. Parang, hello, we are the inheritors and we're not doing anything about it. That's my big beef all the time. So anyway, so it was thanks to Pedro Luengo, who wrote about this engraver. He was able, since he did work on the Franciscan archives in Madrid, he wrote about Father Polonus, Placidus Polonus, who is PPP. So P means Polonus, which refers to his Polish origin. see if I can go back. Because I think this is very typical of how we do our research kung saan nagagaling yung mga sources. So the PPP is Pater Placidus Polonus, who is actually, his Polish name was Marcin Placid Albrecht Wałcza. And through Pedro Luengo's study, we know that he was in Manila from between 1705 and 1719. So that, knowing that, that helps us to date more or less this L-shaped structure. So it's an early 18th century structure, and it could have been there earlier. So thanks to a Polish conference that promoted the study by Pedro Luengo, it was published, and thanks to my being a friend of Pedro, he sent me the copy. So you have to put these things together. And thanks to my being with UST, I was able to photograph the copper plate. And I also remember that Imelda Kahipendaya had written about this image in Archaeology magazine. So these are really strands which have been only now being put together. This is a close-up of the L-shaped convento. Now, another document that can help us is the account of a Chinese being converted, Wan Imbin. Wan Imbin was a Chinese who worked on the vault over the well. So the term is boveda. Boveda can be either the chamber or the upper part. So I'm not really too sure which part of the well did Wan Imbin work on. But we know that he worked there from 1636 to 1639 because in about that time there was a Chinese revolt and the Chinese were massacred. And Wan Imbin was one of those who was supposed to be killed. He was indeed slashed, but then he prayed and he's supposed to have been saved by Our Lady. So that's one of the miracles. And he found himself, after having thrown into the lake, he found himself waking up in front of the shrine where he had worked. So this is his testimony, which is now in the Lilly Library in Indiana, in the States. This is signature. So that's another documentation. Now, 2 years ago, I was in Valladolid in the Augustinian Archives, and they have some files on Caysasay. And so I was given permission to photograph them. And I found this interesting complaint in 1711. These people here, Juan de Villa, Gaspar Garcia, Ignacio Catibog, and Juan de Maranan were like the principales of Caysasay, and they were trying to defend themselves from a complaint filed against them by the local people. And one of them signed in Baybayin. So this is very interesting. So it is since we can read it Doang Garcia, that is Doang Gaspar Garcia. And there is an accompanying document, this time in Tagalog, where people were complaining against these people. Juan Casilaw, Agustin Tumali, Juan Malimpin, Agustin Tenorio, Tomas Maligalig. These are the signatures. So they have been working since 1707, giving the time to build something in Caysasay. And so this is the calculation of, what I understand is the donation of their work to the construction of the, whatever it was that was in Caysasay. And then it is another document in Tagalog, signed with so many people against those four Principalia. Okay, so. And then they listed, their complaint was that they had worked on that whatever it was in Caysasay and they had not been paid. And that they had been made to work on other projects by the four principales, like Juan Garcia, we mentioned, Gaspar Garcia, we mentioned earlier. So, like say, El Dicho Capitan, so they listed them, all their names, and they put here what they had done. Gumawa ng baklad at namihit ng sinulid ng ginawang pukot at itong lahat nasa ibaba. So they in effect they were making fish traps and making fish nets for these four principalia. And they mentioned how much time they'd spent on that extra work and that they had not received payment. Walang upa, walang upa, walang upa. So a very good documentation of who the people were in Caysasay, and that's a very early version of people power actually. So, and very good for the family names. And the reason the document is preserved in Valladolid is because it was eventually the Augustinians who helped to resolve the case, and so the document is filed in Valladolid. So the one who was the witness is Father Sebastian de Foronda, who was Augustinian secretary, and later became Bishop of Cebu. I presume he was there in Caysasay. Here is his signature, Sebastian de Foronda. And so this is also just an excerpt of that document in Old Tagalog, ang mga reservado na pinabawal, pinawalang halaga. Okay, so that's another kind of study, transcription and translation. But this is rather easy to read. And this is the transcription. So my presentation is here in the computer. If you want to go back, you can work on it here. So, in effect, those four principalia had to return the money, had to pay these complainants. And later on, in 10 years later, in 1721, there was a report that a large silver lamp in Caysasay had been stolen. And at the same time, the people had been given exemption from paying taxes if they would work on the sanctuary, which implies that by that time the structure had already been built. That's why there's all these people were given exemptions for 31 men and women given in 1707. So I guess that's a pretty good date for the structure and maybe even the convento and the well. And so this document is requesting for the renewal. Every 10 years it was renewed. So let's try to put back what we have, the dates. So 1603 she discovered the image of Our Lady. In 1636 to 39, one Indian worked on the vault. And around 1639, a church of Corazon is said to have been erected there. And we have to have that this measurement. If this measurement would match that of the church, and then this is the subject of the complaint, the 1708, 1710 work, and the convento was already there by about 1719, according to the TPP engraving. And then we see also that there were licenses for the re-edification of the church between 1735 and 1741. 1754, damage caused by the eruption, the famous eruption. And 1790, the transit dome, two towers were already there. Damage in 1854 and repairs in 1856. So, okay, this is how it was before the earthquake struck, and then the earthquake causes damage, and then it was, luckily by this time, it had already been declared a national national cultural treasure with Mom Grace and I signing the document, which gave the reason for the National Museum to move in. Uh, and so they had to take apart the portico. When they took apart the portico, it revealed a lot of, slowly revealed some beautiful carving on the facade, which had been completely covered with concrete. So these are the first months sent to me by the director, Jeremy Barnes. And so slowly they peeled off the concrete and more carving came out on the facade. And this is how it looked like last December when I was there. And the thing is, uh, so here is the seal of the Augustinian order, and you have a kind of Tablan like image here. But I think some of the damage here was caused when they chipped off the surface so that they would cover it with concrete. And I'm still trying to figure out when the bricks were inserted. This is a very unusual concept for a facade. It's very, very unusual. It's again one of the questions. And so let me show you some slides of what other excavations have been done under the National Museum. And the architect there was architect Axel Katapang, who made these drawings. And interestingly, they had found drainage canals around the church. Here they are, which is unheard of uh, since now. And even last year, they had even designs on the brick pavement. And in front of the church was a well. When I went there, it had been covered up because it was dangerous. But I think I was telling Dr. Barnes that we should have the well excavated. The wells among the Maya and also there. So we don't know what would be do, but to be here. And also by taking off the concrete, many the stones were exposed, and you see that additions of the additional rooms had been added. For example, this over the stairway, and this molding outside continues on the inside. So obviously this one was an addition. And also the roof line had been changed at a later time. So you see here coral stone and then adobe. And this incline is the same, it is reflected in an old photograph. So virtually the entire church has been stripped of its concrete, and you see the coral stone walls. And interestingly, they have different kind of stone here around the side entrance. This is how it looked like before. So in the old concept, they put grouting around the stones, so to give the effect that they were round stones. But actually, when the concrete was taken away, the stones were quadrangular. And also, you can see that there have been changes in so many places. So these are all kinds of questions that we have. When were these installed? So now I'd like to call for the testing of the stones and the size of the stones in the various parts of the area. So these are the stones these are the blocks in the Santa Lucia well, and these are the stones of the church. So it's a connection of the sizes. Okay. So let's go to the convento, kind of L-shaped, and apparently they were not built at the same time. As you see, nagbongguan sila. And inside the church, there are also many signs of changes, like there may have been a tree trunk here. And just to put in more the comparison of the coral stone in other parts of the area. So this is Balayan, this is Bawan. We know that Bawan was built maybe 1692 to about 1700, so that could kind of provide a dating. And then this is San Nicolas, which is excavated. And you see at the end, at the apse, large adobe blocks, and above it are the coral stone blocks. And it seems to me that so these are the older parts of the older sections. And when the waters of Taal Lake were going up, then they tried to rebuild the church using already uncut coral stone. They didn't have time to cut the coral stone anymore. Bara-bara na lang. Until finally they left it. And in Nasugbu, you also find ruins and also uncut coral stone. So were they rushing or they had the money to build the church? They just did any kind of construction. And you find also coral stone in the convento of Taal. Is there a comparison here and the one in Caysasay? And adobe is on the base and coral stone is on the top. And the artistic designs, this one are found on the retablo of San Agustin in Pangil. So a comparison of the arch and the facade, very similar, but they still have some differences. And the retablo of Romblon 1726 with these 2 horns, you also find it here, 2 horns. Similar carving in Paete, and there are parts of complexes which resemble the Holy Family, for example. These are bases found in the ruins which resemble those in Cebu. Now, the most intriguing part is the churches seems to have been built into rock. Because here, it's a rock, it's a cut stone. Parang siningit ang simbahan sa rocks. Now, that's really unused, not really unused kasi Taal, for example, you descend into the church. So because the church is built into the land, not on top of it. And in Indang, they yet also descend into the church. In Cap, Kabuga, Ilocos, we also descend into the church. But the thing in Caysasay is that it's on both sides, and it's really a big question for me. And in the convento here, you also find the same. It is set into the stone, and I'm going to question why, when they found the Santa Cruz in Bawan, it did not remain in the site, but it moved from Bawan to its old present site here. However, the Arena of Caysasay remained in Caysasay, was not brought to the Church of Taal. It is the Santa Cruz in Bawan. So, I'm going to throw my last question here. It seems the church was really cut into rock, and then the outside there's no appearance of it as rock because they covered it with cut coral stone, and you find also the similar outcrop here. And I was thinking previously that could this have been a sacred mound, and the church was built over it as a symbol, very symbolic. But considering also that you find a similar thing here. And so I amplified my concept. Could it have been a separate cave that formed this thing? And so that's why there's a well here. Now, these are questions that we can explore. So, maraming salamat.
Thank you very much for sharing that, your research. And yeah, a lot of interesting questions brought up from not only your research in the archives, but looking at the sites. I hope that, people here can, share some other ideas about what we presented today. So with that, now would be.
So these teams might be a possibility because in the documentation of the witnesses, there was a blind visual quantity who was he originally in a cave, apart from Katamitagala in company who's image. So and they were describing the area as filled with some caves, and then there are rock outcrops. So where are those rock outcrops now? So I presume that those are the ones that are the rocks that you see here. Because from the pupunta na din of that, but then again the description of the area, it used to be there are wells there, and there's a rock outcrop separate from Santa Lucia. So I presume that probably there's been.
Thank you. So that document I haven't really accessed. It's the testimony about Caysasay is now in the Lily Library. But I think it's being worked on now. It is being transcribed and translated. Yeah, thank you for that.
Related, but not here. So there is a resurvey document of this review. It's in the Barangay Colonial. I don't know if you have heard of this, but as of now, the owners do not want any outsiders to excavate. But they call it convento, city convento. And we don't know its relationship with the oldest of the church ruins. Maybe it's something that we can consider in your future research.
The Loob was a former Jesuit mission, and in the late 19th century, in one of the newspapers, there was an engraving of Loob. So I don't know.
But when we visited the area, it doesn't look like a church, it doesn't even look like a convento. The rooms are small. That's just based on the ocular. So we do not know right now what was the function of this small structure.
Yeah.
That's any part.
Okay, so
But that's what they call it, convento.
I think the point, yeah.
Other go ahead and continue what you're saying. You know what I'm going to ask about, of course. Mostly batteries, but first, I saw a few pictures, of course, facing the rear and that's the portal. What's the condition of the portal, and do you know is it a relatively new portal that they're being rebuilt all the time, or is it an old portal? Where do you know?
Well, I would think that the bulk of the church would be 1700, 1710. So the coro is also part of that. And there was only one wood doorbell which supported the ceiling over the choir loft. And it had some floral leaf-like carvings. That has since been taken down because they had to repair the but I think that would have been artistically that would have been part of the early 18th century. Sadly, there's been no music.
Yeah, it's good. Also, going to ask, like, I mean, what sorts of like worship and veneration for the image are being done when they sing vocals for the feast?
Well, the typical for Batangas, you have the lua, which is loa in Spanish. And so they have, you can still find people in Taal and Caysasay who do lua in front of Our Lady of Caysasay. But that's not, that's for you people like you to work on.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Sir, kasi nakita ko sa the text, in Bill, and the student Juan Rivera. So, Juan Rivera died in his hands and took him to the court of Bukod. Do we know where the court of Bukod is?
Oo nga.
Because it's the first time
Well, bonbon refers to the lake, no? So I would presume that would have been the old site of Taal, which could be San Nicolas. It could be San Nicolas. But we don't know if the fort is a palisade or a stone fort. There's also kasi before Taal moved to San Nicolas, it was in a place called Balangon o Balongon, which is on the western part of the Pansipit River. And when the Spaniards came, they sailed up the Pansipit River and they were attacked by the local people. And they had found Chinese traders uh, who had been skinned alive on the shore or on the riverside. So uh, that's a very interesting account. And then from there, I don't know, there's a battle or something. Then they moved, they're at Balangon and then they moved to San Nicolas. But there is a place called Labangon Bay. So I don't know kung Balangon, Labangon, the connection.
Any other questions?
I think one point that we're trying to work here is that the more we find dated examples, we can start comparing the size of the stone, the type of stone, and the technology as benchmarks. And then if we can confirm this with other sites like the old sites around Taal Lake, then we could have we could start working on a table of dated stone work apart from the artistic designs, which is also difficult to do.
We are sort of coming up on time, but I'm sure that survey team, if anyone has any questions, would still continue the conversation. But I think we could end things here today. So thank you everyone for joining us today. For BINALOT. Also, one quick announcement about next week's BINALOT is going to be by our very